It's not the best. It's not good for our democracy. I believe that we should find ways, and that's why I commend CDD for this project. We should find ways of curtailing the escalating cost and monetization of our elections, both internal and general elections. So people are spending money, and ultimately, when power comes to them, they have to pay back. I know some MPs who are still indebted to their financiers one way or the other. So if they don't find contracts or corrupt means to pay them back, they're not going to be steady working in Parliament House. They will be sitting in Parliament House, but their mindsets will be tuned elsewhere. So we must find a way of reducing the cost of elections in this country. That's the first thing.
Yeah, you had mentioned finding a way earlier, and you mentioned even the electoral laws, what to do about them. Asiedu Nketia also, resource to the same things, what we need to do. But what exactly are you saying can be done? At the level of the parties, you decided to expand your electoral college base for internal elections. And that was supposed to be part of the process of removing money. But has that done the magic yet?
It will do the magic because we haven't reached there yet. NDC made an attempt by bringing on board every card-bearing member. But you see, you need the right infrastructure to be able to achieve that in a better managed way. So we started with the polling station executives 55555. There are concerns that we should increase it to every card-bearing member, which is something NDC did and it failed. But to do that, you need certain amount of infrastructure on party membership, how updated they are, payment of their dues, where are they located, can there be any unique identity to identify them? So we are in the mood of doing all this. And it won't be long. Our membership base will be technologically linked and we'll be able to identify. Then we will say we have the infrastructure to carry on this kind of assignment where every card-bearing member will be brought on board. And when that is done, it will be difficult for people to pay monies to that size of
what's your specific recommendation as to legislative approach to reducing this situation, particularly when it comes to funding campaigns?
I think one, the length of our campaign periods must be shortened, and it must be decisive that 2 months, 3 months should be the campaign period. Because in our country, Ghana, we don't have any laws on campaign periods, and people campaign throughout the years, etc. But in other African countries, you go to Kenya, Nigeria, it's 3 months, 2 months. So we must change the law, either the constitutional instrument or any act of parliament, to define the time frame for the elections. And I'm happy that some time back, Ghana Bar Association made this suggestion that campaign period should be limited to a certain amount of time so that when elections are over, at least people can have their peace of mind and the expenditures to be limited to that kind of period. Then there should also be a reform or a law on the filing of political parties' end of year or post-election expenditure and revenue accounts. They should widen it and make it more public, more transparent, and name people who contributed to a candidate and a party. It should not be limited to a party alone. It should be both a candidate and a party, so that at the end of the day, we'll be able to know where the monies came from and what they were used for. It's important that we are able to do this to bring some more transparency into the conduct of our elections and campaign finance.
Okay. Now, Mr. Asiedu Nketia, you have said that there's a need to retweak the law. So what are your specific interventions you are looking at? Do you agree with Peter McMahon when he begins with the reform of the filing of the political party accounts to include candidates? Because presently, what you file is only for the parties. And the Electoral Commission, I doubt, does anything beyond what you decide to declare.
Thank you very much. I agree with Peter on many of the things he has suggested, but I want to go further. We need, for instance, we need to compel the candidate to also disclose. Because the irony of this rising political funding cost vis-a-vis the requirement for political parties to disclose, the amount of money spent, is that the bulk of the funding is done directly by the candidate to whom they choose, without passing the funding through the structures or the accounts of the political party. So sitting at headquarters in Accra, I'm not in a position to know how much the NDC candidate in Kwasimintin, for instance, is spending in his campaign and what he's spending the money on. Much the same way when it comes to presidential campaigns, it is the same. No presidential candidate channels his campaign funding through the political party. So at the end of the year, the parties are able to disclose what amount of money pass through their accounts, and they cover dues and contributions and donations that are done to the party as a party. But mind you, if any big donor wants to contribute to the party, he wants to do it through the person who becomes the president or the MP, because he is the individual whom he will be relying on for subsequent favors and so on. So if the laws about disclosure is just compelling political parties to file accounts, then a lot of the funding will go undisclosed. So that is why Peter is making that suggestion. But I want to add that even with the political party, the regulation is not done very well. But the Constitution mandates the Electoral Commission to organize elections, register people, and so on. There is nowhere in the Constitution where the duty of regulating political parties is imposed on the Electoral Commission. And that is why we have suggested that before you can have the activity of regulating political parties properly in place, it should not play second fiddle to the conduct of elections. We must have an office, the regulator of political parties, that will follow up on their accounts. Even make sure that the disclosures that are made in the final account actually represent reality. And they can check the source of funding and all others. That is why we have made that,
Briefly.